The conference hall on Station Kepler was filled with silence. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat watching the human woman standing at the podium. Admiral Helen Carter stood with her shoulders back and her head held high. She had called this emergency meeting of the Galactic Council, and every species wanted to know why. For weeks, rumors had been spreading across the galaxy. The humans were building something new, something powerful, something that made even the bravest alien warriors feel uneasy in their sleep. Helen looked out at the assembled delegates and began to speak. Her voice was clear and steady. "Thank you for coming today. I know many of you traveled great distances to be here. Humanity requested this emergency session because we have something important to share with you. For the past 10 years, we have been working on a defense project. Today, we are ready to reveal what we have built. This is the UES Titan." Behind her, a massive holographic image appeared in the air above the podium. It showed a spaceship that looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. The vessel was enormous, much larger than the biggest warships currently in service across known space. But size alone was not what made the alien delegates lean forward in their seats with wide eyes and concerned expressions. It was the design that troubled them. The ship looked wrong somehow, as if it existed slightly outside of normal reality. Its hull was covered in strange geometric patterns that seemed to hurt when you looked at them for too long. The patterns appeared to move and shift even though the holographic image was perfectly still. Far away on the Titan itself, Commander Jake Morrison stood in the observation room watching the council meeting through a live video feed. He had spent 5 years of his life overseeing the construction of this incredible ship. He knew every corridor, every system, every piece of advanced technology that made the Titan unlike anything else in existence. He understood what this ship could do, and he knew exactly why the aliens would be afraid when they learned the truth. Lieutenant Nicole Hayes stood beside him, also watching the video feed. She observed the alien faces on the screen and spoke quietly. "They do not look very happy about this." Jake nodded slowly. "No, they do not. They are scared. And honestly, they should be scared." The Titan was not just another warship with bigger guns and thicker armor. It represented something completely new and revolutionary. When humans first joined the galactic community 30 years earlier, the other species had looked down on them. They thought human technology was primitive and crude. The aliens had been traveling through space for thousands of years. Their technology was refined and elegant, perfected over countless generations of careful development. But humans were different from other species. Humans learned incredibly fast. They studied alien technology with intense focus, and then they did something the aliens never expected. They improved it. They found new applications for old principles. They broke rules that everyone else followed without ever questioning them. Dr. Peter Lynn had led the scientific team that designed the Titan. During one of the early test runs, he explained the ship in simple terms to the assembled engineers. "We did not just build a better warship," he said with quiet pride. "We fundamentally changed the rules that define what a warship can be." The Titan's primary weapon system was called the Cascade Drive. It did not work like conventional weapons that fired projectiles or energy beams. Instead, it manipulated probability fields at a quantum level. When the Titan targeted an enemy vessel, the Cascade Drive made it statistically impossible for that ship's defensive shields to function properly. It made the ship's armor unable to absorb or deflect incoming damage. It made any evasive maneuvers completely ineffective. The weapon did not destroy enemy ships through brute force. Instead, it made their destruction mathematically inevitable. Back at the council meeting, a tall alien with insect-like features rose to his feet. He was the Vrexian ambassador, and his translated voice sounded cold and mechanical. "This violates the Cathera Accords. Probability-based weapons were banned after the devastating Cascade Wars ended 3,000 years ago. Every civilized species agreed never to develop such weapons again." Helen met his gaze without flinching or looking away. "Humanity was not part of the Cathera Accords. We were not even spacefaring when you made those agreements. We did not sign your treaties. Therefore, your restrictions do not legally apply to us." The chamber immediately erupted into chaos. Aliens shouted in dozens of different languages. Some jumped to their feet. Others made aggressive gestures toward the human delegation. Ambassador Kira Thorne, a human woman who represented the Scythian Confederacy, tried desperately to restore order, but nobody was listening to her anymore. On the Titan, Lieutenant Daniel Price monitored the flood of communications coming from the station. He turned to Jake with a concerned expression. "Sir, we are intercepting coded transmissions from at least 12 different species. They are already discussing the formation of a military coalition against us." Jake crossed his arms and continued staring at the view screen. "Let them form their coalition. The Titan was specifically designed for exactly this kind of situation." Helen continued her presentation, even as aliens argued and shouted around her. She had been chosen for this diplomatic mission because nothing could shake her composure. She had served in Earth's military for 20 years. She had fought against pirate fleets and defended vulnerable human colonies from raiders. She had learned long ago how to remain calm under extreme pressure. "The UES Titan serves as a deterrent," Helen said loudly, her voice cutting through the noise in the chamber. "Humanity has no interest in conquest or aggression. We seek only to ensure that no hostile power can threaten us with impunity ever again." A deterrent? A strange voice suddenly filled everyone's mind simultaneously. It was the collective speaker, a mysterious entity that represented 6 different hive mind species. "You have created a weapon that makes conventional defense completely impossible. This is not deterrence. This is a tool of oppression and tyranny." Helen's eyes grew cold and hard. Then perhaps the galaxy should have considered that before consistently treating humanity as inferior. Before denying us access to profitable trade routes. Before supporting the Krellian blockade that starved our colony on New Terra and killed 15,000 innocent people. The reminder silenced many voices in the chamber. The New Terra incident had happened only 3 years ago, and the painful memories were still fresh. The Krellian Empire had surrounded a human colony world and refused to allow any supply ships through their blockade. People starved in the streets. Children died from preventable diseases. The Galactic Council had held many meetings and made many speeches, but they did nothing concrete to help. Finally, Helen Carter, who was only a captain at that time, had led a desperate military strike that broke through the blockade by force. She saved the colony, but thousands of colonists had already died. The council session continued for many more hours. Some aliens made direct threats against Earth. Others issued demands and ultimatums. Helen stood her ground firmly and refused to back down even slightly. She made it absolutely clear that humanity would not dismantle the Titan. They would not accept arbitrary limits on their technology. They would not be treated as second-class citizens in the galactic community anymore. Finally, the Vrexian ambassador stood once more. His voice was filled with barely controlled rage. "The Krellian Empire officially declares the Titan an existential threat to galactic peace and stability. We are mobilizing our full armada immediately. In 72 hours, we will arrive at the Titan's current location. You will surrender the vessel to Council authority, or you will be destroyed." Jake received the threat message on the Titan and showed it to Nicole. She read it carefully twice and then looked up at him with worried eyes. "What should we do now?" Jake's face remained calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. "We show them exactly why they should have left humanity alone." The Krellian armada emerged from hyperspace in a perfect military formation that demonstrated years of training and discipline. 300 warships materialized simultaneously, their powerful engines glowing bright against the endless darkness of space. Admiral Vex stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Pride of Krelia, watching the tactical display with deep satisfaction. The humans possessed only one ship. Granted, it was supposedly an advanced and powerful ship, but it was still just one vessel facing 300 of the Krellian Empire's finest warships. "Transmit the surrender demand immediately." Admiral Vex commanded his communications officer in a tone that expected instant obedience. The message traveled across the vast distance of space at light speed, racing toward where the Titan waited alone. The demand was straightforward and simple. Power down all systems on the Titan immediately. Submit peacefully to Council authority for investigation and trial. Accept full responsibility for violating ancient prohibitions against probability-based weapons technology. Failure to comply would result in complete destruction. On Earth, billions of miles away from the confrontation, President Lisa Morgan sat in the secure Situation Room buried deep beneath the Capitol building. The room was crowded with her most trusted advisors and top military commanders. Everyone stared at the same tactical display that showed the Krellian fleet completely surrounding the lone human vessel. General Paul Martinez stood beside the president's chair. As chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he commanded all of Earth's military forces. He leaned down and spoke quietly enough that others could not hear his words. They outnumber us 300-1, Madam President. Even considering the Titan's advanced capabilities, those are terrible odds for any engagement. Lisa kept her eyes fixed on the glowing tactical display. The Titan was specifically designed and built for exactly this type of scenario. Admiral Carter personally assured me it could handle overwhelming numerical superiority. With all due respect, Madam President, Admiral Carter has never actually commanded the Titan in genuine combat conditions. Nobody has. We do not truly know what it can accomplish in a real battle situation. Lisa finally turned to look directly at him. That uncertainty is precisely what terrifies them, General. They have no idea what we are truly capable of doing. That fear and uncertainty may be our most powerful weapon right now. On the bridge of the Titan, Jake carefully studied the Krellian ships as they maneuvered into optimal strike positions. They were being cautious and methodical, moving slowly while maintaining strict formation discipline. They were not underestimating human capabilities this time around. They had learned painful lessons from previous encounters. Current status of the Cascade Drive, Jake asked calmly. Lieutenant Frank Cooper worked at his weapons control console with practiced efficiency. Fully charged and operating at 100% capacity, sir. I have calculated precise targeting solutions for all 300 enemy vessels. How quickly can we engage? We can target and engage the entire enemy fleet simultaneously. The probability cascade field will propagate through their complete formation in approximately 4.3 seconds. Nicole checked her sensor readouts carefully. Sir, Council Station is broadcasting on all available frequencies. They are ordering both sides to cease hostilities immediately and enter negotiations. Are they dispatching any peacekeeping forces to enforce that order? Negative, sir. Only strongly worded diplomatic messages. Jake almost allowed himself to smile at that predictable response. Of course, they want to observe what happens without risking any of their own forces in the process. The Krellian surrender demand appeared on Jake's command screen. He read through it quickly and found nothing unexpected. Submit, surrender, accept punishment for your crimes. The alternative was total annihilation. Prepare a response message, Jake ordered in a steady voice. Inform them that we respectfully decline their generous offer. Sir, all enemy vessels are charging their primary weapon systems, Lieutenant Amy Foster announced urgently from her tactical station. All 300 ships. They are preparing to open fire on our position. This was the critical moment that would determine everything that followed. Jake took one slow, deep breath and thought about New Terra. He thought about every human colony that had suffered because the galaxy viewed humans as weak and acceptable targets. He thought about the 15,000 colonists who had died slowly from starvation because nobody would help them. Activate the Cascade Drive. Employ full dispersal pattern across all targets. Frank's skilled fingers moved rapidly across his control interface. Engaging now. The Titan did not vibrate or shake. There was no dramatic flash of blinding light. There was no visible buildup of massive energy that observers could detect. One moment the ship hung motionless in space. The next moment, reality itself seemed to shiver and change in subtle ways. On the bridge of the Pride of Krellia, Admiral Vex stared at his tactical display in complete confusion. The human ship had clearly done something, but his advanced sensors showed absolutely nothing. No weapons discharge, no energy spike, no detectable emissions of any kind. Then every defensive shield on his ship simply failed and disappeared. The shields did not overload from excessive damage. They did not gradually weaken and collapse. They just stopped existing entirely, as if they had never been activated in the first place. Restore defensive shields this instant, Admiral Vex shouted at his panicked engineering crew. But they were already desperately trying every possible solution. All of their computer systems clearly indicated that the shields were online and functioning perfectly. Power was flowing to the shield generators exactly as designed. All equipment reported normal operational status. But there were no shields actually protecting the ship. They had simply vanished. Then the hull armor began to fail in a way that violated everything Vex knew about physics. Molecular bonds that had held strong for decades suddenly remembered they were subject to entropy and decay. Armor plates that could withstand direct hits from heavy weapons began crumbling into fine dust that drifted away into the vacuum of space. Execute emergency evasive maneuvers immediately. Vex ordered with rising desperation in his voice. But his navigation officer turned toward him with wide, terrified eyes that had seen something impossible. "Sir, our computer systems report that we are performing evasive maneuvers. They insist we are moving at maximum thrust and changing course every few seconds. But we are not moving at all. We remain in exactly the same position." Across the entire Krellian armada, identical scenarios played out on 300 different ships. 300 proud warships found themselves completely and utterly helpless. Their shields were gone. Their armor was disintegrating. They could not move or maneuver. They could not fight back. They were entirely at the mercy of the humans they had come to destroy. Jake observed his tactical display with complicated feelings mixing together inside him. The Cascade Drive had performed even better than the most optimistic scientists had predicted. The Krellian ships remained physically intact and all their crews were still alive, but the ships themselves could not fight and could not flee. They were trapped. "Open a direct communication channel to the Krellian flagship," Jake ordered. Admiral Vex's reptilian face appeared on the main view screen. His alien features were twisted into an expression combining rage with primal fear. "What have you done to us?" Jake kept his voice calm and professional. "We have removed your ability to threaten us or anyone else. Your ships are undamaged. Your crews are all safe and unharmed, but you cannot fight and you cannot run away. This violates every established law of warfare that exists. War?" Jake leaned forward slightly in his command chair. "Admiral, if we were actually at war with you, your entire fleet would already be nothing but scattered debris floating in space. This is merely a demonstration of capability. Your shields did not fail because we destroyed them with weapons. They failed because we made their failure statistically inevitable. Your ships cannot move because we have made their movement fundamentally improbable. The Cascade Drive does not fight you using conventional methods. It makes fighting against us completely impossible." The full implications slowly sank in across the watching galaxy, as every species monitoring this confrontation witnessed the results. The Krellians commanded the second most powerful military fleet in all of known space, and in less than 5 seconds they had been rendered completely helpless without a single shot being fired. On Earth, President Morgan received the preliminary casualty report. 0 deaths, 0 injuries, no permanent damage inflicted on any Krellian vessel. Just absolute and total dominance achieved in seconds. "We need to address the full Galactic Council immediately," she stated firmly to her assembled advisors. General Martinez nodded slowly, still processing what he had witnessed. "This changes absolutely everything. We are no longer asking politely for our rightful seat at the diplomatic table. We are the ones who set the table now." Back on the Titan, Nicole was carefully reading communication intercepts from across the galaxy. "Sir, you need to see this immediately. 17 different species have just submitted emergency legislation proposals to the Council." Jake scanned the legal document that the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened with remarkable speed. Within just 24 hours after the Krellian incident ended, every member species had dispatched their highest-ranking diplomats to Station Kepler. Every single seat in the enormous chamber was occupied. For the first time in the Council's long history, every species cared enough to send their most important representatives. Humanity had forced the entire galaxy to pay attention, and now the galaxy would respond with its full authority. Ambassador Stephen Blake sat in the designated chair for the human delegation. Admiral Helen Carter sat to his left side. Dr. Peter Lynn sat to his right. Stephen had represented humanity's interests in the Council for 8 years now. He was skilled at navigating the complex web of galactic politics and finding workable compromises. But today felt different. Today there would be no easy middle ground to occupy. The collective speaker initiated the session. Its voice filled every conscious mind in the chamber simultaneously. "We convene to address the human crisis. In less than 3 standard days, humanity has demonstrated a weapons system that renders all conventional military doctrine completely obsolete. This situation cannot be permitted to continue." Stephen rose to his feet immediately. "The Titan has violated no established laws. We have committed no acts of unprovoked aggression. We defended ourselves against a hostile fleet that came specifically to destroy us." The Vrexian ambassador made a clicking sound with his mandibles that expressed extreme displeasure. "You neutralized an entire armada of 300 warships without firing a single conventional weapon. You have fundamentally shattered the balance of power that maintained galactic stability for millennia. Admiral Carter spoke next, and her voice carried the cold edge of hardened steel. The balance of power has never once favored humanity. We have been blockaded, raided, and treated like primitive children since we first ventured beyond our home solar system. The Titan simply ensures we will never be helpless victims again. Ambassador Kira Thorne stood up from her designated seat. Though human by birth and genetics, she had faithfully represented the Scythian Confederacy for 10 years. I genuinely understand Earth's perspective and motivations, but surely you must see how this appears to every other species. You have created a weapon that makes any resistance completely futile. How is that morally different from the tyrants and oppressors you claim to oppose? Stephen turned to face her directly. Because we have not used our power for territorial conquest or subjugation, the Krellian fleet remains completely intact. Every single crew member survived unharmed. We fully restored their ship systems after they agreed to withdraw peacefully. We demonstrated restraint when we possessed overwhelming power. This time you showed restraint, interjected the Zephyrian delegate. The Zephyrians were beautiful crystalline beings whose voices sounded like wind chimes singing. But what about the next time? What happens when humanity decides its interests require territorial expansion? Who in the entire galaxy could possibly stop you from taking whatever you desire? Dr. Lin politely raised his hand and waited for the speaker to grant him permission to address the assembly. When the mental nod came, he stood up carefully. I would like to address the technical concerns that many of you clearly have. The Cascade Drive operates entirely within established and well-understood physical laws. We did not discover completely new physics. We simply applied existing fundamental principles in novel ways that others had not previously considered. Theoretically, any species with sufficient mathematical sophistication could develop similar probability-based technology. Theoretically possible, the Vrexian ambassador said with heavy emphasis, but nobody has actually done so. In 3,000 years since the devastating Cascade Wars finally ended, not one species has attempted to recreate probability weapons. We understood they were far too dangerous. You humans arrived recently and completely ignored all of that accumulated wisdom. We were not present to learn that wisdom, Stephen countered firmly. You cannot hold us legally or morally accountable for agreements we never made. We were not part of your shared history. We are writing our own path forward now. The argument continued in circles for many hours. Each species stood and presented essentially the same concern expressed in slightly different words. Humanity had become too powerful too quickly in ways nobody could predict. Something drastic had to be done to restore the previous order. Finally, the collective speaker called for formal order. An official proposal has been properly submitted by a coalition of 23 member species. The Council will now hear the complete terms of the Restriction Act. The Zephyrian delegate read the detailed terms aloud in a voice like singing crystal. Humanity would be legally required to completely dismantle the Titan. All research related to probability-based weapons would be submitted to permanent council oversight and control. Humans would accept strict binding restrictions on future military development. All human-controlled territory would be placed under active peacekeeping supervision to ensure full compliance. Stephen listened to every single word without allowing any emotion to show on his face. When the formal reading finally concluded, he stood slowly and deliberately. Let me be absolutely clear about Earth's official position. We completely reject these proposed terms. The chamber immediately erupted into chaos. Aliens shouted angrily in dozens of different languages. Some made threatening gestures toward the human delegation. Others activated their translation devices to ensure the humans fully understood their outrage. The speaker's powerful mental voice boomed through the confusion, demanding immediate silence. You reject the Council's legitimate authority? The speaker asked with genuine surprise. We reject any attempt to treat humanity as a criminal threat that must be contained and controlled. Stephen clarified in a voice that carried to every corner of the chamber. We are not children requiring constant supervision. We are not criminals needing monitoring. We are a fully sovereign species with exactly the same fundamental rights as every other species represented in this room. On distant Earth, President Morgan watched the live session broadcast with her entire cabinet assembled around her. Secretary of Defense Karen White looked deeply troubled by what she was witnessing. If they vote to enforce the Restriction Act through military action, we will be facing the combined might of the entire galaxy in open war. Director of Intelligence Chris Evans shook his head confidently. They will not vote for enforcement. They legally cannot. Council regulations require completely unanimous consent for any enforcement actions taken against a member species. All we need is one single ally willing to vote against it. Do we actually have such an ally? President Morgan asked with concern. We are about to find out the answer, Chris replied quietly. Back in the council chamber, the formal vote began. One by one, each species cast their vote on whether to support the Restriction Act. Stephen watched the numbers climb steadily higher with growing internal concern. 15 votes in favor, 20 votes in favor, 30 votes in favor. The momentum seemed unstoppable. Then the ancient Dalthian Empire voted against the measure. Complete silence fell across the entire chamber. The Dalthians were among the very oldest species in the council. Their vast empire spanned hundreds of worlds across multiple sectors. When the Dalthians spoke, absolutely everyone listened with respect. The Dalthian High Minister rose slowly and carefully from his seat. He was extremely old and his movements showed his advanced age. We have listened to all of these arguments with great interest and consideration. We are told that humanity is dangerous because they innovate without respecting tradition. But when did innovation itself become a punishable crime? We are told they must be contained because they refuse to follow rules they never agreed to follow. But sovereignty is not a privilege we grant as a gift. It is a fundamental right that all species possess simply by existing. The Dalthians risk their own security by opposing this necessary measure, the Vrexian ambassador warned ominously. No, the High Minister replied with quiet strength. We risk our most important principles by supporting it. If we can arbitrarily dictate terms to humanity today, who will be targeted next? Which species will wake tomorrow to find the Council has decided they are too dangerous, too different, or too successful to deserve full freedom? Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The High Minister had struck directly at fears that many of them secretly harbored. The Dalthian Empire proposes an alternative countermeasure, the High Minister continued. We establish a mutual non-aggression framework. Humanity formally agrees not to use the Titan for offensive military operations. In exchange, all Council species formally agree to fully respect human sovereignty and territorial rights. No blockades, no economic sanctions, no special restrictions imposed on humanity alone. Stephen quickly exchanged glances with Admiral Carter. She gave the smallest possible nod of approval. This outcome was significantly better than they had realistically hoped to achieve. Earth formally accepts the Dalthian proposal, Stephen announced clearly. The vote will now proceed on the alternative measure, the collective speaker announced. This vote proved much closer than the first. Many species remained deeply reluctant to. 6 months had passed since the Council voted down the Restriction Act. Lieutenant Nicole Hayes stood alone in the analysis room aboard the Titan, studying a star map that was covered with small red markers. Each marker represented a separate incident, an attack, a mysterious accident involving human merchant ships or research stations or colony vessels. 17 merchant vessels, she reported to Jake when he entered the room. 9 research stations, 4 colony transport ships, all either destroyed completely or severely damaged in the past 90 days alone. Jake studied the map carefully and noted the patterns forming. Pirates? That is what all the official incident reports claim. But these pirates somehow possess brand new military-grade weapons and well-maintained ships. Somehow they always know exactly when and where to strike our most vulnerable and valuable targets. Someone is supplying them with weapons and intelligence information. Multiple groups, I think Nicole said while pulling up additional data. I ran detailed analysis on the weapon signatures we recovered from attack sites. They show a mix of Vrexian, Krellian, and Zephyrian technology. Those 3 species are not officially communicating with each other at all. But somehow their advanced weapons keep ending up in the same pirate fleets. Jake accessed the casualty list on his personal data pad and felt his jaw tighten. 243 humans dead. Not a massive number by the standards of galactic warfare, but every single death represented a real person with family and friends. What does intelligence say about this pattern? They claim there is insufficient hard evidence to make formal accusations against specific governments. But Captain Linda Barnes has been quietly tracking financial transfers through the banking system, shell companies, hidden accounts, indirect supply chains. The setup is very sophisticated, but she has identified clear patterns. Before Jake could respond to that information, an urgent alarm sounded throughout the entire ship. Lieutenant Frank Cooper's voice came through the communication system with notable stress. "Sir, we have a priority distress call. Colony ship Mayflower is under active attack in the Deneb sector." Jake and Nicole immediately ran to the main bridge. The primary view screen displayed the Mayflower, a large civilian transport carrying 3,000 colonists to establish a new settlement world. 6 pirate vessels had surrounded it in a classic attack formation. These were not the usual poorly maintained raider ships. They were proper military warships with heavy armament and coordinated tactical movements. "Time to intercept at maximum speed?" Jake asked urgently. 18 minutes at our best sustainable speed," Frank reported from his station. "The Mayflower's shields will fail long before we can reach them." Jake made his decision in an instant. "Engage quantum jump drive. Take us directly into the middle of the combat zone." "Sir, jumping directly into an active battle situation is extremely dangerous," Frank warned. "We could materialize inside debris fields or directly in someone's weapon's trajectory. Your concerns are noted and logged. Do it anyway." The Titan shimmered and vanished from normal space. Seconds later, it reappeared directly in the midst of the ongoing battle. The pirate ships immediately scattered in different directions when they recognized the infamous human warship that had humbled the entire Krellian armada. "Cascade drive is fully online and ready to fire," Frank announced professionally. "I have calculated firing solutions for all 6 targets. Hold fire for now," Jake commanded. "Open a direct communication channel to the pirate flagship." A scarred, brutal face appeared on the main view screen. Captain Lou Grant was a human traitor who had sold his loyalty to the highest bidder years ago. He led one of the most ruthless pirate bands operating in this sector. "Captain Morrison," Lou said with an ugly smile, "I have heard many impressive stories about you and your miracle ship. Stand down immediately. Grant, release the Mayflower and your crews will be permitted to leave this system alive." Lou laughed harshly. "You are not going to use that fancy probability weapon on us. We are positioned too close to the colony ship. Any cascade field manipulation at this range might affect them too. You could accidentally kill the very people you came here to save." His tactical assessment was unfortunately correct. The cascade drive had specific limitations. One of those limitations was precision targeting at extremely close range. If Jake activated it now, the probability field might spread to include the Mayflower and leave the innocent colonists just as helpless as the pirates. "You have one final chance to surrender peacefully. Grant, I strongly suggest you take it." "I do not think so, Captain. My employers are extremely curious to see what the famous Titan does when it cannot use its primary weapon system. Honestly, I am pretty curious myself." The communication channel closed abruptly. The pirates immediately opened fire, but they did not target the Mayflower. They directed all their weapons at the Titan itself. Conventional weapons, certainly, but there were many of them coming from multiple attack vectors simultaneously. "Shields are holding at 87%, Nicole reported calmly, "but they are boxing us in tactically. If we return fire with conventional weapons, we run a significant risk of hitting the Mayflower with stray shots." Jake studied the tactical display with intense focus. Grant had positioned his ships with considerable skill, using the vulnerable colony transport as an effective shield. This was intelligent strategy, which meant someone with real military training had planned this specific attack. "Frank, can you target only their weapon systems? Disable the ships without destroying them completely?" "Negative, sir. They are maintaining too tight a formation. Any weapons discharge we make carries unacceptable risk of collateral damage to the Mayflower." Jake smiled slowly as an idea formed. "Then we do not use any weapons at all. Nicole, deploy the combat drones. Execute pattern Delta 7. Understanding showed clearly on Nicole's face. "Yes, sir." The Titan launched exactly 50 combat drones from its internal bays. Each drone was roughly the size of a small fighter craft. They spread out rapidly in a complex 3-dimensional pattern, weaving between the pirate ships with impossible precision and speed. The drones did not fire any weapons. They did not need to fire. Each drone emitted a carefully calibrated electromagnetic pulse, specifically designed to interfere with advanced targeting computers. Within just a few seconds, all the pirate weapon systems went completely offline. Their sophisticated computer-assisted targeting was reduced to basic manual aiming, which was essentially useless in the chaos and speed of modern space combat. Now, Jake ordered with satisfaction. Move the Mayflower to a safe distance. Powerful tractor beams locked onto the colony ship and began pulling it smoothly away from the combat zone. The pirates realized they had lost their protective shield. They broke formation immediately and attempted to flee. Cascade drive, minimum spread setting, Jake commanded. Target their engine systems only. Frank worked his console with practiced skill. Engaging now. The probability manipulation was surgically precise this time. The pirate engines did not explode catastrophically. They did not suffer permanent damage. They simply became statistically improbable to produce any thrust. 6 warships drifted helplessly in empty space, unable to move or escape. Broadcast this message on all available frequencies, Jake said firmly. Transmit to the Council, the Vrexian Empire, and anyone else who might be listening. We know exactly what is happening here. We know who is behind these coordinated attacks, and we are completely done being patient with this situation. On Earth, President Morgan convened an emergency strategy meeting with humanity's key allies. The Dalthian High Minister attended through a holographic projection. Representatives from 3 other species who had quietly supported humanity also participated remotely. This shadow war cannot be allowed to continue, Morgan stated flatly. We have solid evidence linking these pirate attacks to 3 different council species. We want formal economic sanctions. We want criminal charges filed. We want financial reparations for our losses. The Dalthian minister looked genuinely troubled. Do you possess proof that would satisfy the Council's extremely strict evidentiary standards? Captain Linda Barnes stepped forward. She worked for Earth Intelligence Services. We have detailed financial records, encrypted communication intercepts, and direct testimony from captured pirates. But by the Council's legal standards, everything we have is technically circumstantial. We cannot prove direct government involvement beyond reasonable doubt. Because they are extremely careful, Morgan said with frustration. They use multiple layers of middlemen and shell corporations. But we know the absolute truth. What do you intend to do? Asked Ambassador Iron of the Kethis Unity, one of humanity's quiet supporters. Morgan looked directly at each person in the room. We are going to force them to reveal themselves. The Titan is going to pay a diplomatic visit to the Vrexian homeworld. The room filled with shocked protests and objections. The Dalthian minister held up his hand firmly for silence. That action would almost certainly be interpreted as an act of war by the Vrexians. Not a military attack, Morgan clarified carefully. A peaceful diplomatic visit. The Titan will park itself in stable orbit above their capital world. Ambassador Blake will formally request an official meeting with the Titan's arrival in Vrexian space triggered immediate panic throughout the entire star system. Military fleets scrambled desperately from their orbital bases to establish defensive positions. Civilian traffic scattered in every direction like schools of frightened fish fleeing from a predator. The massive human warship moved through the system at a steady, unhurried pace. It continuously broadcast peaceful diplomatic intentions on all available channels. But it made absolutely no effort to conceal its overwhelming destructive power. On the bridge, Jake watched his tactical display as Vrexian military vessels rushed to form protective formations around their homeworld. Current count of enemy ships? 417 vessels, Frank reported from his station. They have called in absolutely everything available. Border patrol ships, deep space exploration vessels, training craft. This represents their complete military strength concentrated in one location. Observe their formation carefully, Nicole added with interest. It is purely defensive but completely uncoordinated. They are reacting emotionally to our presence without executing any coherent tactical plan. They are absolutely terrified of us. Ambassador Stephen Blake stood beside Jake's command chair, observing the same tactical information. He had transferred to the Titan specifically for this critical diplomatic mission. Now he would discover whether careful words could accomplish what superior weapons had already proven possible. Open a direct communication channel to the Vrexian High Council, Stephen requested formally. The face that materialized on the main view screen surprised everyone on the bridge. Instead of Ambassador Zenth or any of the militant military leaders they expected, it was Counselor Lyra. She was widely known throughout galactic politics as a moderate voice advocating for peaceful solutions. Ambassador Blake, she said through her mechanical translator, this is an extremely unusual and unprecedented situation. I am fully aware, Counselor. That is precisely why I specifically requested to speak directly with you, instead of going through traditional diplomatic channels. You requested me personally? For what reason? Because I have studied Vrexian politics intensively for 8 years. I know you strongly oppose the military buildup against humanity. I know you argued passionately for accepting the Dalthian Compromise, and I know you are intelligent enough to understand that this tense situation can only resolve in 2 possible ways: peaceful negotiation or catastrophic conflict. Lyra's mandibles moved in what might have been an expression of bitter amusement. You park your ultimate weapon in orbit directly above my homeworld and speak of peaceful negotiation? I brought our most powerful military asset to your planet specifically because we want to negotiate, Stephen corrected gently. If we wanted war, we would have attacked already without warning. We did not do that. We came here openly and transparently. We announced our intentions clearly to everyone. We requested diplomatic dialogue. That is not aggression, Counselor. That is desperate diplomacy from a species that wants peace. Desperate? Stephen's expression hardened noticeably. 243 of my people are dead. They were murdered by pirate groups using Vrexian weapons. Pirates funded by Vrexian financial institutions. Pirates attacking targets selected by Vrexian military intelligence. We have concrete proof of all of this. We have possessed this evidence for months. But instead of immediately going to the Council and starting an official war, I came here personally to talk with you. I am giving your government one final chance to end this shadow war quietly, before it escalates beyond anyone's control. In the Vrexian High Council chamber located deep underground beneath the capital city, Lyra sat among her government colleagues. Zenth and his militant faction watched her with openly hostile expressions. Other council members simply looked exhausted and defeated. The shadow war had become increasingly difficult to maintain secretly, and its effectiveness was highly questionable. Humanity continued growing stronger instead of weaker. What exactly do you want from us? Lyra asked carefully. We want all attacks to stop immediately and permanently. We want public acknowledgement that Vrexian government officials were involved in these attacks. We want appropriate financial reparations paid to the families of those who died. And we want a genuine binding treaty between our 2 governments. Not just another council resolution that everyone ignores, but a real enforceable agreement that both sides will actually honor. And if we refuse your demands? Stephen glanced briefly at Jake, who gave a barely perceptible nod of approval. Then Captain Morrison will demonstrate the Titan's complete capabilities against a carefully selected military target in this system. There will be 0 civilian casualties, no damage to any planetary installations, but we will totally destroy enough military assets to leave your species effectively defenseless. Then we will present our evidence to the full council. We will demand economic sanctions and trade embargoes. Your economy will completely collapse within 1 standard year. You would destroy us entirely because of the independent actions of a few extremist elements in our government? No, Stephen said quietly but firmly. We would defend ourselves from an organized systematic campaign, designed to destroy us through indirect proxy forces. There is a significant moral difference, Counselor. Lyra terminated the communication channel. For exactly 10 tense minutes, the Titan waited in complete silence. It remained surrounded by the entire Vrexian fleet, but nobody dared to actually fire on it. Jake used the waiting time to carefully review contingency plans and backup strategies, though he sincerely hoped none would prove necessary. When the communication channel reopened, Lyra was not alone anymore. The entire Vrexian High Council sat behind her in a formal semicircular arrangement. Even Zenth sat among them, and his expression showed both burning rage and bitter resignation. We have discussed your demands extensively, Lyra said with measured care. Vrexia is willing to officially acknowledge that certain rogue elements within our government structure provided funding and weapons to pirate groups that attacked human commercial and civilian interests. We will pay substantial financial compensation to all victims' families. We will submit to an independent investigation of our military leadership, conducted by neutral council observers. In exchange, humanity must agree to remove the Titan from Vrexian space immediately and accept reasonable limitations on how you can deploy it in future situations. What kind of limitations are you proposing? Jake asked before Stephen could formulate a response. Zenth spoke directly for the first time, his voice filled with barely suppressed anger. The Titan will not enter the sovereign space of any council member species without explicit advance permission. It will not be deployed in any offensive military operations. Its weapon systems will be subject to periodic council inspections to verify ongoing compliance with agreements. Absolutely not, Jake stated immediately and firmly. The Titan is a sovereign Earth military vessel. We do not and will not accept foreign inspections of our technology or artificial restrictions on our freedom of navigation through open space. Then there is no possible agreement. Zenth said sharply. You demand that we accept oversight and punishment for our actions, but you refuse to accept any oversight of your own actions. We will accept full oversight and consequences for our actions, Stephen interjected smoothly, attempting to find workable middle ground. If we violate the non-aggression framework, the Council has established mechanisms to respond appropriately. But we will not permit foreign inspectors aboard a classified military vessel. We will not accept arbitrary limits on our basic freedom of navigation. The difficult negotiations continued for many more hours. Stephen and Lyra did most of the actual productive talking, while Zenth and Jake exchanged hostile glares across the communication channel. Slowly and painfully, a workable framework began to emerge from the arguments. Rexia would officially acknowledge that government elements were involved in attacks against human targets. They would pay substantial financial compensation. Military officials directly responsible would face trial before a neutral council tribunal. In exchange, humanity would agree to provide 48 hours advance notice before the Titan entered another species' sovereign space, except in cases of genuine emergency or mutual defense obligations. It is not enough, Jake said when he reviewed the draft terms. They attempted to systematically destroy us using proxy forces. They should face much more severe consequences than simply paying money. It is what we can realistically achieve without starting a full-scale galactic war, Stephen replied. And it establishes an incredibly important precedent, Jake. Rexia officially admitted attacking us. That is enormous. It means we are not second-class citizens anymore. It means attacking humanity carries real consequences that other species will fear. On Earth, President Morgan reviewed the proposed agreement with her complete cabinet. The debate grew intense and heated. Military advisors argued strongly for more severe punishment and better guarantees. Diplomatic staff warned repeatedly that humanity had already pushed as far as they safely could, without triggering wider conflict. Finally, Morgan made her executive decision. We accept these terms as negotiated, but make one thing absolutely crystal clear to them. The Titan arrived in Earth's solar system 3 weeks after the signing ceremony on Council Station Kepler. As the massive warship approached humanity's homeworld, millions of people gathered in cities across the planet to watch its return. The ship that had changed everything moved slowly through space, its unusual hull patterns catching the light of the sun in strange ways that still hurt to observe directly. On the bridge, Jake stood at his usual position and watched Earth grow larger on the main view screen. After months of tension and conflict, seeing the blue and green planet felt like finally releasing a breath he had been holding for far too long. Nicole stood beside him, also watching their homeworld approach. It looks different somehow, Nicole said quietly. Or maybe we are the ones who changed. Jake nodded slowly. Both, probably. Earth is different now because of what we accomplished. And we are definitely different because of what we experienced. The communication system activated with a soft chime. President Morgan's face appeared on a secondary screen. She looked tired but satisfied. Welcome home, Captain Morrison. The entire planet is very proud of what you and your crew achieved. Thank you, Madam President. We only did what was necessary to protect humanity's interests. You did considerably more than that, Morgan replied. You forced the galaxy to recognize us as equals. You ended a shadow war that was bleeding us slowly, and you did it all without starting a larger conflict. That takes remarkable skill and restraint. After the official communication ended, Jake turned to his crew. These men and women had served with him through everything. They had trusted his decisions even when those decisions seemed impossibly risky. I want to thank all of you personally. What we accomplished out there was a team effort. Every single person on this ship played a vital role. Frank looked up from his weapons console with a slight smile. Does this mean we can finally stand down from combat readiness? For now, Jake replied. But stay sharp. The galaxy is watching everything we do. One mistake could undo everything we worked so hard to achieve. The Titan entered a stable parking orbit above Earth. Jake, Nicole and the senior staff prepared to shuttle down to the surface for debriefing sessions and public recognition ceremonies. Before they departed, Jake took one final walk through the ship that had become his home. He passed through the engineering sections where Dr. Lin and his team had installed the revolutionary Cascade Drive. He walked past the drone bays that had saved the Mayflower. He visited the bridge one more time and stood in the command chair, remembering the moment when 300 Krellian warships had surrounded them. Thinking about everything that happened, Admiral Carter's voice came from behind him. She had quietly entered the bridge. Jake turned to face her, wondering if we made the right choices, wondering what comes next. Helen walked closer and stood beside the command chair. You made the only choices available to you, and you made them well. But you are right to wonder about the future. This is just the beginning of something much larger. What do you mean? The Titan proved that humanity can defend itself, Helen explained. But one ship, no matter how powerful, cannot protect all of our interests across the galaxy. We need more ships. We need better technology. We need stronger alliances. Are we starting an arms race? We are ensuring our survival, Helen corrected. The Vrexians agreed to peace, but only because we forced them. Others watched what happened and learned lessons. Some learned to respect us. Others learned to fear us. And a few learned to hate us even more than before. We need to be ready for all of them. Down on Earth, in a secure government facility, President Morgan met with her top advisors to discuss exactly those concerns. Secretary of Defense Karen White presented a detailed analysis of galactic reactions to the Titan. Preliminary intelligence shows mixed responses, Karen reported. 17 species have approached us quietly about potential trade agreements and defensive alliances. That is very positive. However, 9 species have significantly increased their military spending. They are clearly trying to develop countermeasures to the Cascade Drive. Can they succeed? Morgan asked directly. Dr. Lin, who had also returned to Earth, answered that question. Eventually, yes. The Cascade Drive operates on principles that any advanced civilization can theoretically understand. We had a temporary advantage because we thought differently than other species, but that advantage will not last forever. Maybe 10 years, maybe 20, but not forever, so what do? Asked Director Chris Evans. We keep innovating, Dr. Lin said simply. We do not stand still. We do not assume the Titan makes us invincible. We continue developing new technologies, new strategies, new ways of thinking that others have not considered yet. And we build real alliances, added Ambassador Stephen Blake, who attended the meeting via secure video link from Council Station. The Dalthian Empire supported us when nobody else would. We need to strengthen that relationship and build new ones. Isolated powers eventually fall. Connected powers endure. President Morgan listened to all the advice and recommendations. Then she made several critical decisions that would shape humanity's future. Earth would begin construction on 3 more ships using Titan-level technology, but each with different capabilities. They would establish a permanent embassy on the Dalthian homeworld. They would increase funding for scientific research by 40%, and they would create a new division of the military specifically focused on galactic-scale operations. We are not going back to being small and afraid, Morgan stated firmly. But we also will not become the tyrants that we fought against. We find a middle path. We stay strong enough that nobody dares attack us, but we stay humble enough that others can trust us. Several months passed. The galaxy slowly adjusted to its new reality, where humanity could not be ignored or dismissed. Trade routes that had been closed to human ships quietly reopened. Research collaborations that had excluded human scientists began sending invitations. The Galactic Council, which had barely acknowledged human representatives before, now listened carefully when Ambassador Blake spoke, but not everyone accepted the changes peacefully. In the outer regions of known space, several species began forming a loose coalition. They called themselves the Sovereignty League, and they claimed to oppose the concentration of power that the Titan represented. Their official statements spoke about balance and fairness. Their private communications revealed deeper fears and resentments. Jake learned about the Sovereignty League during a classified briefing 6 months after returning to Earth. He had been promoted to Admiral and given command of Earth's expanding deep space fleet. The Titan remained his flagship, but now he had 3 cruisers and 12 frigates under his command as well. How serious is this threat? Jake asked the intelligence officer presenting the information. Captain Linda Barnes, who had been promoted for her work tracking the Shadow War, pulled up additional data. The League currently includes 8 species, none of them major powers individually. But together they control significant territory and resources. They are pooling their research efforts to develop what they call a probability stabilizer. A counter to the Cascade Drive, Nicole said. She now served as Jake's second in command with the rank of commander. Exactly, Linda confirmed. Our scientists say it is theoretically possible. A device that locks probability fields in place, preventing manipulation. If they succeed, the Titan's main advantage disappears. Jake studied the star charts showing Sovereignty League territory. How long until they have a working prototype? Best estimate is 3 to 5 years. But that assumes everything goes perfectly for them, which rarely happens in advanced research. We need to prepare for them succeeding sooner, Jake said. Start developing contingency tactics. What does the Titan do if the Cascade Drive stops working? The work of building humanity's new position in the galaxy continued day by day. Some days brought progress and hope. Other days brought setbacks and challenges. Through it all, the Titan remained a constant symbol. To humans, it represented their refusal to be victims. To their allies, it demonstrated the value of friendship with humanity. To their enemies, it served as a warning about the cost of aggression. 1 year after the Vrexian Treaty signing, Jake stood once again on the Titan's bridge. They were escorting a convoy of human colony ships to a new settlement world in previously disputed territory. The system had been claimed by 3 different species, but none had actually colonized it. Now humans would establish the first permanent presence, and nobody objected. That simple fact represented how much had changed. Convoy is secure and on course, Commander Nicole reported. No threats detected within 3 light years. Maintain standard vigilance protocols, Jake ordered. Just because it is quiet does not mean it is safe. Frank, now a lieutenant commander, looked up from his console. Admiral, we are receiving a priority message from Earth. It is marked urgent. Jake accepted the transmission. President Morgan appeared on his screen, and her expression was grave. Admiral Morrison, we have a situation developing. The Sovereignty League has made contact with the Krellian Empire. Intelligence indicates they are negotiating some kind of mutual defense pact. The Krellians want revenge for the humiliation we caused them, Jake said immediately.